ado, I'd like to introduce you to Sarah Burnett, and she's written her first book on autonomous enterprise. I've read it, it's fascinating, and some really good case studies in there that sort of blow your mind a little bit about what the future is going to look like. But I know she's also going to talk a little bit about the challenges of writing. I know there's a lady here tonight who works with publishing, and I know from my own experience of writing, co-authoring and BCS book, how many iterations you've got to go through. So yeah, kudos to you, Sarah, because you did it on your own. I was lucky enough to do it with 5 other ladies.
Thank you.
So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over.
Mind switching over to my deck?
Yes,
Oh, it just follows.
It does follow, so you should
Thank
be
you.
okay. Applause for you.
Say thank you to you. Hi everyone, really pleased to be here to have a face-to-face meeting, and hello to all of you online. Thank you very much for joining. The book is called The Autonomous Enterprise, and that's because in my work as an industry analyst, I was actually seeing the direction of travel. So as an industry analyst, I looked at emerging trends, technology trends, and emerging software solutions. And I would then talk to the companies that were developing them. I would assess their software, and I would then write about where I think things would change, how enterprises would have to do things differently, and what impact it would have on different industries, as well as the competitive landscape in the market. And one of the ways that I was doing this was to actually go and visit leading edge technology vendors. So I was very lucky. I was going to places like Bangalore and to Silicon Valley, and I was actually seeing the software being developed where the companies were located. And some of these were huge campuses, as some of you know, for example, the massive Indian service providers, they've got huge campuses in Bangalore, and they've got a lot of brains there working on technology. And similarly in Silicon Valley, which is really the where it all happens, to tell you the truth, some amazing developments were going on. So at the time, I'm now talking about a few years ago. So one example was a service provider that I'm talking about 5-6 years ago, they were using intelligent document processing to speed up loan servicing for a client. So the loan servicing had been outsourced to them, and they were using intelligent document processing because the process is very document and data heavy. So they were able to do things very fast. And that meant that their customer was able to then increase its revenue and take on more customers of its own. Another example was back in Silicon Valley. It was in San Francisco where I met a company that had one of the original health apps. And, although this is quite usual now, particularly after the pandemic, we've all got used to seeing the doctor on an app on our phone. But at the time, it was relatively new. And this company had also added some additional features. It wasn't just about making appointments with GPs. It was making appointments across the globe, no matter where you were. You could, if you needed a doctor, you would go through this app, you would describe your symptoms. And behind the scenes, it had some level of analytics and intelligence. It was matching basically doctors with experience of handling those kinds of symptoms. And matching them to the patients. And then in addition, while the patient was waiting to see the doctor, it would offer them some kind of, you might do this, it might help a bit with your condition, and also show the doctor what other GPs had recommended as part of treating those conditions. So there were companies that were getting this for their staff, so particularly companies that were spread around the world. So that was another example, and then some incredible, breathtaking developments in an innovation center in Palo Alto, where first of all, they were demonstrating how we might do our shopping in the future. So they literally had the house of the future, the kitchen where you might just say what you wanted and the order would go through, stuff like that. And it doesn't seem like, it doesn't sound like very futuristic now with people having Alexas and so on, but it was back then. And also the kind of experiences that you might have as a customer. And the other thing that really caught my eye was having holographic imaging. So when, say, you're a field engineer working in the field, you can actually have a look at 3D images of the engine that you're trying to fix. And I think some of that is already starting to happen. I've heard things about vending machine engineers, for example, being able to get 3D imaging of how to fix things. And these are just the beginnings of that kind of development. I think that still needs further development, but it's happening. And it's not the fact that they're developing these technologies, but it's also the fact that they're innovating. It's the innovation that is so powerful. And another aspect of my work was looking at what's already being done. So not looking to the future, but what's already being done. So I used to work for Everest Group, which is an analyst firm. I used to lead its intelligent automation team. And we did lots of research about this impact of what's happening, how does it change how things are done today. And in one study, we interviewed 41 enterprises that were using intelligent automation technologies back then. I think this was done in 2018-19 kind of timeframe. And then we assess them for the maturity of adoption, because you can adopt technology and make a really lousy job of it, or you can adopt it and make a brilliant job of it and literally build the foundations for more development. And in this case, we judged 8 of them to have reached what we call the pinnacle of adoption at that time. And you can see in the data here, this is a chart which I've included in my book with permission from Everest Group. So you can see the green ones that are the pinnacle enterprises. 50% had achieved a cost improvement in the area where they'd applied the technology of over 60%. These are the kind of figures that companies would never dream of achieving in one kind of project. And even the ones that weren't pinnacle enterprises, about nearly 30% of them had achieved similar kind of benefits. So there's the developer side with all their innovation, which I was seeing around the globe, and then the users, the enterprises that were achieving such huge benefits. So it sort of became quite clear to me, firstly, the benefits of intelligent automation to businesses as things are today are huge. So there is, for example, I won't go through all of this, but there's flexible capacity, for example. Take an insurance company, if a natural disaster happens, they get a ton of claims, and it's not unusual for those claims to take forever to be cleared. Just look at all the travel rebates that had to be given when the pandemic hit. Now, if you had automated a lot of the things, a lot of the business processes behind the scenes, you would have been able to deal with these kinds of things faster. So what I'm saying here is that with automation, with digital solutions, you can then switch more machines on and process more of those cases and clear, and not actually ever have a backlog, and then switch them off when you no longer need to handle a large volume. So that's just one example. I've talked about cost savings, and there are other benefits. Companies often try and standardize their processes so they're easier to manage and run. When you encode the process steps into a piece of software, of course, you're also embedding standardization. So just some examples of the benefits. So before I get too far into this kind of intelligent automation, I'd like to go back to this slide and talk about the fact that these solutions actually produce loads of data. loads of data that can be further analysed and reviewed and opportunities identified. So you end up with things like insurance companies that pop up out of nowhere and take on the giants of the industry. And one example is Lemonade Insurance in America. You may have heard of them. Lemonade basically does everything in an automated way. In fact, to me, it's an example of an autonomous enterprise. Basically, you get your quote from a robot, then you get your case processed by a robot. The humans only get involved if the robot can't deal with whatever it is that you want. Maybe there's an exceptional situation of some kind. Another example is Ocado, which is now very established, but it came into a saturated market, didn't it? There were already very big established supermarket chains. So for somebody to dream of coming in, disrupting the market with an online model and then automating everything behind the scenes. I don't know if you've seen videos of their robots working behind the scenes. They're fascinating. And they've not only disrupted the market and carved a niche for themselves, they are now also rebadging their solutions and selling it to other supermarkets. So they're delivering online services to other supermarkets under their brand, not Ocado, but that's the other supermarket brands. And going abroad, they've now started to expand globally too. So there you go. There's another, to me, what I call an autonomous enterprise. So it's innovative, the number of analytics that it runs in a day, just to make sure that the food isn't wasted, that the stocks are rotated fast enough and food waste is reduced. That's just one thing, apart from having the right things on the shelves for the customers, So this is what I love about the power of AI, the power of analytics that power AI. What it's able to deliver is not just automation, but it's this huge chance to innovate as well. And in the book, I talk about things like microservices that you would never dream of doing without automation. So I do give some examples like companies that now produce music, jingles for different purposes, and the jingles are AI generated. Another one is being able to offer things like picking fruit with robots and putting them into the punnet. So it's like the fruit to punnet process, literally a microservice being automated. And at this point, I'd also like to point out that there are great opportunities for women in this, because designing the journey, it's not just about bits and noughts and ones. It's about designing journeys and things that generally often appeal to women. It's the sort of artistic side of it as well. I'm not saying we shouldn't, women don't do techie stuff. We do. We're all examples of that. But there's that other dimension that might attract women that wouldn't normally go into tech, but they would be willing to do this kind of, a journey, experience design, user design, and so on. So then, if we take, going back to the automation side of it, if we take a position where, over time, 70% of transactions are automated, 90% of procurement processes, and we're not really far off that. In some companies, a lot of procurement processes are automated. 80% of recruitment, maybe that's an area where we're not yet there. There's quite a bit to go to get to that level. So you get the picture. We're bit by bit automating all these business processes. So what does that mean? Where does that get us? And these were the questions that I wanted to answer in the book. Where are we heading? What does it mean for enterprises? What are they going to be looking like in the future? What about the future of jobs? What about the ethics of it all? So this is what I've attempted to answer in the book. And to me, we're on the road towards autonomous enterprises. It's not an overnight, it's not an overnight thing. It's not going to happen quickly, but it is happening. And there's definitely a destination, albeit an interim one, because I genuinely believe everything will continue to change and evolve. So whatever destination we reach will be a temporary one for a few years anyway, and we move on. And with this kind of data, you can be sure that enterprises are going to be spending on it. They're going to be investing in technology to do just that. So, you know, to become an autonomous enterprise, you also need the kind of vision and maturity of adoption that the ones in my Pinnacle report were identified to have. You do need to think in a joined up way. You know, you need to think about not just what you can do today, but also where everything is heading. So you need this kind of planning of where you want to be in a few years' time, but also be ready to achieve the tactical, immediate requirements in your organization. If, like me, you've been in the IT industry for years, there are always these discussions about strategic goals versus tactical goals. You want to achieve both, and that's what you need to be thinking about. How can I get to that destination while also achieving these intermediate objectives? You need to keep an eye on the horizon of technology, what's coming, what's going to change, how that change is going to impact your plans, and also look at your data in detail and see what it's actually telling you. So these are the characteristics of an autonomous enterprise. And they'll be, you know, traveling to lots of different destinations, lots of stops, if you like, along the way. And as time goes by, you know, they'll sort of eventually become autonomous, where what I mean by that is that the large majority of their business processes will get done automatically. But it doesn't mean that there won't be any jobs for humans, and I'll cover that in a minute. Andrea very kindly mentioned the case studies. There are 4 case studies in the book. One of them is Siemens Global Business Services. They are a shared services organization, and they have offices, delivery centers in something like 12 locations around the world. And they get 7 million service tickets a year. 7 million is absolutely massive. So what they wanted to do was to automate some aspect of that, processing those service tickets. And so they developed the bionic agent internally. It took them about a year to develop it. And where they have applied it, it's now handling about 70% of those service tickets, and is improving the throughput, it's improving the quality. And they tell me that some of the decisions that the bionic agent has made is helping the humans better, because you know, it's just sticking to the rules that it's given. Whereas with us, we would be going, should I do this? Should I do that? You know. So there is that side of it as well, but you know, I'll come back to the question of what about jobs for humans and how will it affect humans. I'm very optimistic about that, I can tell you. So in the book, I talk about the evolving enterprise model. So this is relevant to the group of workers in enterprises that are called knowledge workers. So knowledge workers are people who have skills in doing something like insurance claims processing, or they handle pensions, the complications of pensions, they handle other financial things, or they might be, you know, handling hospital admissions and discharges. So everything that they do, there's a lot of knowledge behind it. Typically, they come into the enterprise and they have this kind of one-to-one relationship with their computer. They come in, they log in, and they might have 5 or 6 applications they log into, and throughout the day, they'll be doing the swivel chair integration. They'll be going from one window to the next, etc. And many of these things will now be based on cloud. So there'll be this kind of on-cloud and on-premise relationship as well. I think in future that model will change significantly. So those business processes will be largely conducted by software robots or digital solutions that are sitting on cloud. The people will still be there. They'll either be activating the robots when they need them, or they'll be supervising the ones that have been scheduled to run at certain times. They'll be checking for correct handling of cases, any exceptions, any things that these software solutions couldn't handle. And they'll also be developing them, they will be improving them. They'll be looking at the data and looking for things like how the processes could be better optimized. They'll be looking at what else they could do with the data, you know, and hopefully also spotting opportunities for innovation, business growth, and so on. And, you know, some of the success factors in the book, I don't think you'd be surprised to see any of these. They are just good old-fashioned common sense success factors, good data, knowledge capture and curation, because, you know, if the machines are down, you want to still be able to conduct your business, maintaining your systems and your infrastructure, managing your skills. So, you know, as you saw in the previous picture, I believe there still be humans in the enterprise working. They need their skills maintained, and as well as the knowledge of those processes, because you can't let those go. You have to have them documented, version control. You then have to have the people with the skills to build whatever it is that you need in the future. And importantly, you need succession planning. You know, as the managers age and move out of the business, then you want to be in a position to bring young blood in, people to take over, and they will need to have had their knowledge and skills developed over time as well. Extensive use of analytics and adopting new working models, being agile, really, that's what that is all about. And, you know, all these, I'm sure there'll be twists and turns along the road, because new disruptive technologies will come along, and you will have to change course occasionally, but the destination, the ultimate destination, will still be that autonomous enterprise. And here's just one example of how things might evolve, so how you might never stand still. And this is one where you might order a new car online. You might specify all the sort of features that you want online, and the manufacturer produces the car, and you go to the shop, to the showroom, and you pick it up. But then you might actually order it, and they might deliver it to you. You know, they might use some kind of forklift truck to move it into a lorry and deliver it to your door. But that might change again, because that forklift might be an intelligent one that operates by itself, and also takes it, takes it to an autonomous lorry which delivers it, talking about it like a human, to your drive. And eventually in future, you might actually find the car drives itself to your home. So, you know, this is all about evolution, isn't it? Everything is changing and developing and evolving. So the question of what happens about jobs for humans. While I was doing the research, I found these two charts. The one on the top left, that is from the US. And you'll see this is about their unemployment rates. And this was in 2021, after the pandemic, or the pandemic was still going on. And you see here that the unemployment figure the rate had dropped to levels of 2001. Okay, so that's a stretch of 20 years. And in this one, the bottom right, that is the UK one. And this was in June to August 2021 here. And you see that it's, you know, almost at the same rate as in 1971. So that's a 50-year period. So this is why I'm optimistic, because during these decades, lots of things have changed, haven't they? For starters, we hardly ever need to visit a bank. So bank branches now have skeleton levels of staff. We all use our apps. The other thing is, for example, if you want to travel now, you don't have to go and queue, you know, to get your boarding pass, unless you really have to. You do it online, you know, you download your boarding pass. And in some airports, you go and take your luggage and you actually check your own luggage in. You don't have anyone helping you. So the numbers of people that were involved in the checking process have significantly reduced. But the industry has continued to grow and grow. And as you can hear now, after all this, after they laid loads of people off during the pandemic, now they can't fulfill demand. So they're having to cut flights because they haven't got enough people. And the hunger for travel hasn't gone away. Everybody wants to travel. So that bit hasn't, it doesn't mean that because those jobs have gone, if there are fewer people involved in the check-in process, that there aren't jobs in the industry. Another example is the kind of thing I mentioned about insurance. The number of insurance products out there in the world have significantly increased. So you need more people who understand the different types of insurance, but you can actually do the boring, the sort of the processing of claims. You can automate that, but there are all kinds of other things involved with insurance that are more interesting to us humans, aren't they? Because as humans, we don't like repetitive things. And one thing that I'm finding in my current job, I work for a process intelligence company, is where really skilled folks with a lot of experience are spending about a third of their time cutting and pasting data from one application into another. That's the kind of thing that you would automate and let them get on with higher value work. I think overall there may be a reduction in the number of jobs for some industries in some companies, but there'll be demand for other jobs elsewhere. And our challenge is to make sure that people develop the right set of skills, that if an industry is impacted by automation, that we get retraining in place for people to move on to other jobs. And we've been terrible at that, haven't we, in the past? We have not done well in that. And that's, I think, the bigger challenge. I mean, just look at the doctors' vacancies that we have that we can't fill, the nurses, we've failed to get people into that kind of training where there is demand, there's huge demand. And another factor that is sort of going back to the more optimistic view of things is the massive change in the world population over the 50 years. The population has continued to grow, and yet we're still at the same level of unemployment. So that's the good side of it. The part of it that I'm not optimistic about is the ethics of it. And I do write in the book that AI can be used maliciously, and we do need to put in frameworks that manage it. But I think there's a lot of focus on AI alone. It's technology as a whole that needs to be managed. When the people's data was shared without their permission on Facebook, that wasn't AI, that was just a technology provider that chose to do that. And of course, there's all this, if you think about the mining for precious materials, digging the earth up so that we get the right things for batteries and for metals for these devices and so on. There's a huge amount we need to do with regards to ethics of technology as a whole. And I completely agree that AI, because of the potential of it, could make life really horrible for some people where it's used maliciously. And that's something that we need to address. And there isn't enough going on. I did find some developments where some guidelines and best practice was coming out, but I think more action is needed in that space. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. We did, thanks to Andrea, we did manage to get the discount code activated on the BCS bookshop. If you'd like to buy the book, if you use my name as the token, as the discount voucher, just put Burnett in capital letters. When you come to check out, you will get 35% off. So that was something that we managed to get done today. Yeah. So, any questions?
I agree with you about we need intelligent automation, not just automation, because the way I see the automation at the moment, people, they are using it without thinking, and they say, "Oh, the computer said so," and they don't even discuss it or think logically about it. We need to educate the people who are using the automated system.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I agree, and I think with AI particularly, we are at risk of redefining the world in terms that only AI understands, and that is a problem. So we are not, we are still learning about this, and we do need to learn more, try it more, and understand the limitations and the risks better. Definitely, yeah.
Margaret, I saw your hand go up, which is why I stepped forward. Margaret? She's just got a hand up.
She's been having internet connection issues today, so it's possible that she's trying to reconnect.
Was there a question here? I think I saw a hand. Yes.
Yeah, thank you for that introduction. It was fascinating, and I know your book is about AI, and maybe you're very well placed to answer this question. What is the relationship between data analytics, AI, machine language? Are we talking about the same things?
Yes, to some degree. So it's machine learning, you mean?
Yeah, ML.
Machine learning.
Yeah.
Yeah. So AI is more of a sort of all-encompassing term. Advanced analytics, I mean, they power AI anyway. But machine learning is a way of implementing AI. So yes, they are related, very closely related. And there's deep learning. There are other kinds of. There's good old-fashioned AI, which is what you might remember as sort of close to expert systems. So there are different kinds of AI. Basically, it refers to where machines have the ability to learn and, act as if they're intelligent.
Hi, thank you for the talk, first of all. Second of all, I wanted to ask, since you worked with and you had case studies and you ended up looking within the companies and seeing the way they produce this technology, have you noticed any kind of trends regarding data? So exactly what we're talking about now, big data is already here, and we can obviously see its use when it comes to machine learning and the future of AI and how we teach AI patterns. But from an ethical point of view, we also know it can be bad data or it can be used maliciously. So have you noticed any trends within the companies regarding if they sell their data or if they use it internally to kind of use it for other purposes?
So I think the companies that collect a lot of data for different reasons, they could potentially use the data for things that they haven't disclosed previously. But I think because of the fiasco of the sort of things that happened with Facebook, I think they're very wary of doing such a thing. So there's a lot of where data is used, there's a lot of anonymization going on. They would tell their clients, I mean, I'm talking about business to business, in the sort of business to consumer, I think there's still a lot left to be done. I'm still very wary of adding another app to my phone in case it's taking my data and not telling me, so there's just still a lot of unknowns, and we do need to we do need to bring all of that under control. But data is now everywhere. I mean, the amount of data, I mean, just think how much the giants know about all of us, it's frightening, isn't it? And, we're basically helping them develop their AI. Every time you go and play a game that does something like ages your face or something, you're helping another facial recognition company train its AI. So it needs to change. We do need to change that side of things. And I don't know who will change it.
Talking of that, do you have any sort of tips on what people can do to protect their data a little bit more? I mean, you deal with lots of big data companies and know that they're mining their data, but are there tips that we should be aware of?
Well, definitely, if you have, they tell you about their privacy rules, to go and set all the parameters to what you prefer them to do. Like, with Google, I've set all my parameters so that it shares as little as I can possibly make it. share, and then make your choices. Who are you going to allow to have your data? You know, do you want to have that app, yet another app on your phone? Do you know what they do with your data? You know, it's just making decisions for yourselves to protect. So set the parameters of what they're allowed to do with your data where you can. And when you don't know what they're doing, just don't add that app. And to me, that is the problem, because, you know, being an AI fan, I want people to use the apps to help train the AI, you know, but I don't want, you know, I don't want household assistants that advertise to me because I say a word and it triggers the advertising. I don't want that. I don't want the robot cleaner that has a camera that then sends messages back to whoever owns it. You know, it's these sort of things have to be sorted out. Yeah.
Hi, Sarah, and thank you for the presentation. Who are your targeting audience to read your books? Would it be like a C-suite executive or cybersecurity architect, solution architect, business analyst like myself, project manager? Do you have like a pitch for your target audience?
Yes, so it's definitely not for the very techie, because, you know, I don't go into the technology. I do have a chapter about the science of AI, but I've tried to make it as accessible as possible without needing to be very techy. So it is aimed at people like operations managers, business analysts like yourselves, definitely C-level executives who want to understand the potential. It's about the practicalities of, you know, what you can achieve with it rather than the science. There's so many books about the science of AI anyway, you know, I couldn't possibly, I'm not an AI scientist, I'm the applied AI person. So, you know, I wouldn't be able to tell you about all the ins and outs of, you know, how to improve algorithms and stuff like that. It's not my area, but I can tell you how they're being used and what great advantages the companies that use it. So yeah, it's really opening people's eyes to what's happening out there and what it means, you know, what we need to be thinking about as organizations.
Okay, thank you.
We've got a question online from Elizabeth, who
Right.
says, how would you suggest we educate youngsters to help them be ready for this new world? What maybe adding, maybe what skill sets they may need as well?
Well, I think you can definitely let them play with any tools that are available for children to learn to code and, you know, to play with AI. There are lots of gamification of AI out there. As long as you're prepared that you're also helping the AI company develop its AI, I think that's okay. But they are very clearly gamified for fun, and they show you the potential of what AI can do. But definitely let them play with it, let them learn about technology. I think Joe was giving us a great example with your sons, Joe. They were learning to code very young. Yeah. And do BCS courses, you know, do BCS events for kids as and when we run them, you know. Absolutely, just familiarize them.
Yeah, because that's one of the questions that has also come up is, what courses would you recommend? And I think, you know, it depends on the age of the person that's doing it, but there are lots of code clubs, the STEMettes, and you know, all of those things that run a lot of free courses for kids and the youngsters. I would really recommend, you know, looking to get your children involved with
They're just so hungry to learn anyway. They pick things up. I'm just look at how they know how to fix the telly when the channels or, you know, all the different devices go wrong. They know better than us. Yeah.
Yeah. So Margaret's typed in her message as she was having internet problems, and she says, do you think internationally agreed legislation will ever be agreed?
I think, the EU is doing stuff, for example, and that is across the EU, and they have produced some guidelines already. I think the risk is in dictatorships where AI is used to literally imprison people in their own homes. I think that won't ever, we can't ever run a legislation anywhere that will help everybody And that is a problem, and that could make life intolerable. Instead, you know, where that kind of practice goes on, that is a problem, definitely. And it is a worrying trend, you know, that it's already, you know, sort of facial recognition in the wrong hands can produce a lot of bad things for people. And I'm really glad to see some of the big tech companies have stopped doing facial recognition. Yeah. Joe, you had a question.
I did. I'm interested in how enterprise transitions to become an autonomous enterprise. Part of the backdrop to asking about that is that the work that I do at the moment is about kind of skills with manufacturing firms, where often they're not very digital yet, but they're transitioning to become much more digital. And
Yeah.
a lot of that kind of digital transformation is going on. But this is happening all at the same time as they've got a really aging workforce. And so lots of the people with the most expertise are all reaching retirement. So there's like this dual challenge that all of the most skilled people are retiring, yet there's this whole new skill set to learn at the same time as transitioning to it all going digital.
Yeah,
I don't have a very well formed question, but I'm just very
No,
interested to know your insights about that.
that's a very good observation, and there's an international shortage of skills anyway, you know. I think this is where they really need to document the processes, and there are now technologies that actually capture and document the processes as people do them. So I think it's really important to pay attention to that. And we're going to say train young people coming through. But the trouble is there aren't enough young people coming through in certain industries. I think that is proving to be a huge challenge, as in fact we have seen in the IT industry getting people in. But luckily things are changing now, aren't they? The latest figures have been very promising, but you know, we do need to document things, version them, maintain them, literally like data. You know, the process, your process is now as important as, you know, as your data, and you know, people are really bad at managing their data. So
Yeah, and I think with the skill shortage, there's also, you know, an onus on companies to say, well, you know, we'd like you to stay, you've got a lot of experience, and actually reskill, repurpose, I think is the buzzword, which I really don't like, but that's a repurpose. Yeah, exactly. So, you know, but you've got people who understand your business and your industry or your organization, and getting them to actually start, you know, even if it's a temporary thing, you know, it's worth it. So
Yeah, I think that kind of makes the human element a bit really
Yeah.
apparent, doesn't it?
Yeah, because,
Actually
you know,
getting those people to do that.
yes, I've always maintained there are people younger and keener and happy to code. You know, yes, I can still code, but not, it's not necessarily something that I want to do right now. But you know, they're not the answer to everything, and I see a lot of organisations just going after millennials or people who've just graduated. And yes, by all means, you bring a lot of good skills to the workforce, but you're not the only skills. You need a cross section, because you need to learn from them as well. So from the more experienced people.
the challenge is when something happens that is not documented. So you can document your processes as much as you like, but when something happens that only an experienced person can deal with, that's when the real problems will be, you know. And you know, there are those problems exist today. I don't know if you've had to deal with any kind of complicated scenarios with any financial company. They just can't, you know, on average, they can't handle it. They need to go and find someone else who knows better, and they're like gold dust, basically. You know.
So Bina's got a few questions.
Right.
So first part is, how can we extend what we currently do to include better IA and AI awareness in readiness? And what can people do to better prepare for changes?
Yes, so one of the things that I did when I was an industry analyst, when I was still working at Everest, was to interview the head of Siemens Global Business Services. And he was telling me about his philosophy for making sure that people were on board with the technologies that they were introducing. So it was about communicate, demonstrate. So he would say that they put whatever it was, a prototype in their staff canteen, so people at lunchtimes could go and play and understand, you know, sort of familiarize with the new technology coming in. So it wasn't like a sudden, you know, deployment that would affect their lives, their work, daily work, and maybe create a kind of anti-change mood among the staff. So it was definitely, you know, educate, inform, get them on board, and show them, you know, shout about the benefits. If you do a prototype, shout about the benefits, that will help you create the business case for getting more funding as well. So it's about, you know, definitely have a go, see how you go, don't be afraid of failure, try again. So they talk about fail fast, don't they? You know, all that kind of thing. But, you know, honestly, best practice is the best way of doing things. Yeah.
So if young people are not coming through, what can career changes do to transition into the sector, and leading on then to which skills are acutely short and which are worthwhile building for women, particularly for women? But I mean, I also agree with Elizabeth that we need all sorts of diversity. So
Yes,
maybe
definitely.
people, how do we attract people into the sector?
Definitely more role models, that, you know, from different backgrounds, you know, absolutely with diversity in mind. Going to schools, talking to, you know, school children, showing them what can be achieved, you know, just inspiring them. I think we have tried a lot to help with women, but, you know, there's a whole other lot of people that we could reach, and we know how difficult it is just, you know, trying to sort of help women get into the industry. I think it is happening just because of necessity, though. I think because, you know, people are extremely short of data scientists, companies are extremely short of data scientists, and developers are like hotcakes at the moment, you know, because they can pick and choose, and they can work in one company and move on, and it's being able to find experienced developers that's proving very challenging for many companies. Yeah. So get into development if you haven't. Again, there are loads of courses, you know,
And loads of boot camps.
loads of boot camps, loads of code clubs. They're not just for children, they're for adults too.
Any other questions in the room?
I wanted to ask if you thought that some clients would be a bit put off by intelligently automated enterprise, because at the moment, like, there are big trends on young people really caring about like the social reputation of the company.
I think there's definitely that. There is definitely people worry about their image that might give out there. But it's happening, whether they like it or not. It's actually happening. If they don't do it, their competitors are going to be doing it. But they need to do it with people in mind. They can't just sort of say that team is axed because we've automated everything. That is absolutely the wrong way to do it. Because it's not about replacing people, it's about making it easier for people to do more interesting work. You know, that should be the focus. But I know that there'll be some companies that will just purely do it for cost cutting. But at the end of the day, they'll suffer. They'll, you know, if you do it that way, then you lose a load of other benefits that you would get if you did it with people in mind. Yeah.
Any more questions online? We've got time for another one.
I do. Hi, my name's Yasmin Mohammed. I probably should put the camera on, bear with me.
Hi, Yasmin.
Hi, it's been a really great session. Thank you so much for this. My question's more around BCS. I think you mentioned earlier that you'd like more support getting the word out and getting more people, especially women, to join the membership. I have a non-profit I started 2.5 years ago, kind of doing the same thing, trying to empower people to kind of go after their dreams, of which tech is one of many great professions to get into. So I was just wondering, does it have to be a formal relationship or partnership, or is it okay for me just to be like, guys, girls, this thing exists, check it out, sign up to these courses, these will be great for you, etc., and just have that informal kind of, yeah, putting the word out?
I think it's fine for it to be informal, Yasmin. Yeah, in this day and age, we need as many reach as far as we can to get people engaged. So if we can help you reach out and help more people get more diversity into tech, then I'm all for it.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
What I can't do is start advertising your jobs and things like that, but what we can do is, if it's about training and getting people, then I think we should be supporting everyone we can.
Thank you.
So reach out and we'll see what we can do together. Okay. With that, I'd like to bring this evening to close, but there is food and drinks next door, and I encourage those of you who are here to come and mingle a little bit, because we don't do that very often. It's a small group, so we all get to speak to each other, and to thank everyone online for your contributions this evening. And last but not least, to thank Sarah for her talk this evening. I think it's been very insightful. Well, thank you very much.